My parents decided cutting me off was my birthday present, so I delivered the ultimate consequence right back. On my 20th birthday, my own parents decided to give me a gift. They cut me off financially completely. But what they didn't know was I was about to uncover a secret, a shocking betrayal that would expose their ultimate hypocrisy and change my life forever. It was February 18th, my birthday, and I was walking to my morning lecture, already a little stressed from exam season. The phone rang, Mom. I braced myself for the usual happy birthday, but instead it was a verbal ambush. "Happy birthday, sweetie," she chirped, then immediately launched into how I was relying on them too much and needed to experience the real world. My stomach dropped. They'd pay my rent and phone until the end of February. After that, I was completely on my own. Dad chimed in. "We still love you, honey, want you to stay in touch. But this will teach you independence." Independence? They gave me 11 days. 11 days to figure out my entire life. I was reeling. I begged them, pleaded with them to reconsider. "I'm in the middle of exams. I don't have time to find work." Their response? Cold. "Real adults handle pressure," they said, and then without another word they hung up. I just stood there on the pavement, my world crumbling around me. That afternoon, a blur of panic, I ran to student services. I explained everything, desperate for emergency housing. My apartment, totally unaffordable now, but without official proof, a letter from my parents confirming they'd cut me off. I didn't qualify for assistance. So I swallowed my pride, emailed my parents, begging for that documentation. Their reply was a masterpiece of twisted logic. Providing documentation would defeat the purpose of learning independence, they wrote. Can you believe it? They actually said helping me get help wasn't helping. The next 3 days were a nightmare. I called every landlord in town, pretending I had an income, begging for a place I couldn't afford. Deposits, references, proof of employment, all things I didn't have. I applied for 20 jobs, but everyone could see the desperation clinging to me like a shroud. No one would hire me. I had £400 in my account. That was it. My roommate, Jess, found me curled over my laptop, tears streaming down my face, frantically trying to calculate how to survive. She looked at me, really looked, and asked what was wrong. I spilled everything, the whole humiliating, terrifying story. Jess's face went from concern to pure outrage. "That's insane," she exclaimed. She immediately called her mom, who was a social worker, and that's when a tiny spark of hope flickered. Jess's mom mentioned something about education support laws, about my parents potentially violating them if they'd claimed me as a dependent. That gave me an idea. My Uncle Craig, he was an accountant, did my parents' taxes. He'd always been the kind one, sneaking me money for textbooks when my parents insisted I use the library. I called him, my voice shaking, explaining my nightmare. I tentatively asked if he knew anything about their finances that could help me. He went quiet for a long moment, then said he'd look into something and call me back. 2 days later, he did. He asked for my student email and registration numbers. His voice was calm, but I could hear a subtle tension. "I found something interesting," he said. Oh, it was interesting, all right. My parents had been claiming education tax credits for me for 3 years, worth about £8,000 annually. And get this, they'd also applied for and received a parent learning allowance from my dad's company, specifically for supporting children in university. Another £5,000 a year. That's £13,000 a year they were collecting, supposedly to support my education, while only spending about £8,000 on my actual expenses. The kicker? Uncle Craig had copies of everything. He'd warned them repeatedly that if they weren't using the money for my education, it was tax fraud. They'd assured him, in writing, that every penny went to me. And the ultimate slap in the face, they'd already filed for this year's credits back in January, claiming they'd be supporting me through my entire 3rd year. Craig sent me all the documentation and advised me to contact the university's legal aid. I felt a surge of cold, righteous fury. I met with the legal aid advisor, who looked at the stack of papers and immediately picked up the phone. Within hours, I had emergency funding approved and temporary campus housing. I wasn't homeless. I wasn't alone. And then the university's lawyer sent my parents a formal letter. It stated very clearly that they were legally obligated to provide the support they'd claimed on taxes or face an investigation for education benefit fraud. That's when the call started. My parents screaming, "How dare you involve our personal finances?" My response, my voice steadier than I thought possible. Independent adults handle their own problems. This is me handling mine. My mom started crying, claiming they just wanted me to learn life skills. I told her, I've learned that when someone commits tax fraud, there are consequences. My dad, predictably, threatened to cut me off from the family entirely. You already did that, Dad, I countered, the anger simmering. But you still wanted the financial benefits of having a student daughter, didn't you? The fallout was swift and brutal for them. The university contacted my dad's employer about the parent learning allowance misuse. They launched an investigation. He had to pay back 3 years of allowances and got formally reprimanded. Then the tax office started their own investigation into the education credit claims. Uncle Craig testified, calmly and truthfully, that he'd advised them repeatedly about the rules, and they'd assured him, in writing, it was all for my education. My parents ended up paying back thousands in false credits, plus penalties. But the best part? That happened at my graduation. They showed up, acting like nothing had happened, like they were the proud, loving parents of a successful graduate. My mom had her phone out, ready for photos, a huge, fake smile plastered on her face. Dad stood next to her, arms open, actually expecting me to walk over and give him a hug. Like the past few months of legal battles, of me nearly being homeless, of their fraud, none of it had ever happened. They waved. My mom did that little finger wiggle thing she always did to summon me. Dad kept his arms open. They truly believed I'd just fall into line, because that's what I'd always done. But I wasn't that person anymore. My stomach churned. I turned away from them. I walked straight past them, toward where Uncle Craig was standing with Jess and her family. My mom called out my name, that bright, cheerful voice cutting through the crowd. I kept walking. She called again, louder, an edge creeping into her tone. I didn't look back. My feet carried me toward the people who actually showed up for me, the ones who didn't abandon me when things got hard. Jess saw me coming, and her whole face lit up. Her mom held a huge bunch of flowers, and they were all smiling, genuinely happy to be there. Not because it made them look good, but because they cared. I heard my dad's voice behind me, tight with annoyance, dramatic. Of course, he thought I was being dramatic. That was his go-to. Uncle Craig opened his arms, pulling me into a real hug, a safe, genuine embrace. He squeezed my shoulders. "I'm so proud of you," he murmured, and I could hear he meant it. Jess's mom stepped forward, presenting me with the flowers and a card. "You deserve to celebrate properly," she said. Inside the card, a gift certificate for groceries. My eyes welled up. This was what actual support looked like. These people had been more family to me in the past few months than my parents had been in years. They helped me when I had nothing, when I was scared and alone. They didn't make me beg or prove myself. They just showed up. Jess hugged me next, squeezing tight, whispering, "So glad you made it through everything." Her family clustered around us, all genuine smiles and congratulations. For a second, I let myself feel pure, unadulterated happiness. I'd earned this degree despite everything my parents tried to do to sabotage me. I'd survived their fraud, their abandonment. I was standing there in my cap and gown because I refused to give up. Then, they appeared at the edge of our little group. My parents hovering. My mom moved closer, her voice saccharine. Your cap and gown look so nice, darling. We're so proud. She was trying to wedge herself into our celebration, pretending she belonged. Jess, my amazing Jess, immediately stepped between us. She physically blocked my mom from getting any closer. Her voice was clear, firm. This is a private celebration, she said to my mom, with people who actually supported her through university, not people who cut her off and committed fraud. My mom's fake smile flickered. Then she plastered it back on, trying to laugh it off like Jess was joking. But Jess didn't budge. She stood there like a wall. A surge of gratitude washed over me. Jess's mom joined her, forming a united front. My mom's face flushed red. She looked over Jess's shoulder, trying to catch my eye, trying to get me to signal that it was all okay. My dad's expression changed completely. His mouth tightened into a thin, angry line. His public face was slipping. We're her parents, he announced, his voice loud enough that nearby families glanced over. We have every right to be here. He was trying to make Jess and her family look unreasonable. But what he conveniently forgot was they lost that right when they chose fraud over me. They lost it when they cut me off on my birthday with 11 days' notice. They lost it when they refused to give me documents that would have helped me. They lost it when they kept collecting money for my education while leaving me with 400 pounds to survive. He crossed his arms, still staring at Jess, trying to intimidate her. She stared right back. Finally, I turned to face them directly. My voice, surprisingly steady, cut through the tension. Why are you here? It was a simple question, but it hung heavy in the air. My mom did her nervous little laugh. We wanted to celebrate your achievement, she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Like months of legal consequences, investigations, and formal reprimands never happened. Like they didn't have to pay back thousands. She looked at me, hopeful, waiting for me to accept her explanation, to let them back in. Dad nodded along, this united front of concerned parents. The disconnect between their behavior and reality was so vast, it was almost laughable. Uncle Craig spoke up, his voice calm and reasonable. Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private, he suggested, trying to diffuse the situation. My dad whipped around to face him, all his controlled anger breaking through. You betrayed the family, he snapped, his voice tight. You had no right to give her those documents. You violated our trust. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. He was accusing Craig of betrayal, while he was the one who committed tax fraud. He was the one who lied, repeatedly assuring Craig in writing that all the money was going to my education when it wasn't. Craig just stood there, not rising to the bait. He wouldn't engage. My mom tried to calm Dad down, probably worried about the scene they were making, but he shook her off, still glaring at Craig. A university staff member approached, her expression polite but concerned. Is there a problem? You're blocking the path. My parents transformed instantly. The anger vanished. Dad was all smiles and apologies. Mom did the same, laughing. So sorry. Just got caught up in the excitement. They were masters at this. They looked like perfectly normal, caring parents, maybe a little too enthusiastic. The coordinator smiled, clearly buying the act, and I felt sick watching them perform. This was who they were. They could look good while being terrible, and they'd been doing it my whole life. I'd watched them charm teachers and neighbors, all while treating me like a problem at home. The coordinator started to turn away, satisfied. Everything is fine, I said, my voice clear, carrying across the space. These people were just leaving. She stopped, looked back, confused. Panic flashed across my mom's face. She reached out, trying to grab my hand. Her fingers closed around my wrist. We need to talk, she pleaded, her voice tight, as a family, about moving forward, healing, putting this all behind us. Her grip tightened. She'd always used tears and desperation to manipulate me, but I wasn't the same person. I'd spent months learning to stand on my own. I didn't know her compliance just because she was my mother. I pulled my hand away, stepped back. My words came out clear and firm. You made your choice when you cut me off as a birthday gift. You doubled down by refusing to provide documentation. You chose fraud over your daughter. You chose to keep collecting money while I nearly ended up homeless. And now you want graduation photos for Facebook so you can pretend to everyone else that you're good parents. My mom's face crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Dad's jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists. The coordinator looked between all of us, finally realizing this was far more complicated. Other families were definitely watching now. I didn't care. I was done protecting their image at the expense of my own well-being. They wanted to teach me independence, and I'd learned it, just not the way they intended. Dad's face went red. He stepped forward, close enough for me to smell his coffee breath. You're being ungrateful, he snarled, his voice rising. After everything we sacrificed for you. Jess actually laughed out loud, a sharp bark of disbelief. She stepped up beside me, pointing a finger at my parents. They literally profited off claiming to support her, she said, her voice clear, carrying to all the nearby families who had stopped their celebrations to watch, while providing less than they received. Dad's mouth opened and closed. He couldn't find words. Mom grabbed his arm, hard, her nails digging into his jacket. Their eyes darted around at the staring faces. Panic set in. She leaned close to me, whispering urgently, "We can discuss this later. Just one photo with my graduate daughter." Her voice was shaking. She tried to smile, but it looked wrong, stretched too tight. She reached for my arm again, but I pulled back. No, I told her. Because that photo would be a lie, just like your tax returns were lies. Uncle Craig shifted his weight. Perhaps, he added quietly, if they'd spent the past months trying to make amends instead of fighting the consequences, this conversation would be different. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. My mom's face crumpled again, tears flowing. The same manipulation tactic. "I never meant to hurt you," she sobbed. "I just wanted you to learn independence." Jess's mom stepped forward, a cold, hard expression on her face I hadn't seen before. "Cutting off a student mid-semester isn't teaching independence," she said to my mom, her words like stones. "It's financial abuse." My mom flinched. Dad's hands curled into fists. "If you can't forgive us and move past this," he threatened, "I'll leave and never speak to you again." The same threat since I was a kid. The same pattern of control. I looked him right in the eye. "That's been your pattern all along, hasn't it, Dad? Threatening abandonment to control me. I'm done being controlled by people who see me as a tax deduction." His face went from red to almost purple. For a second, I thought he might actually explode. The ceremony coordinator returned, this time with a security guard. My parents immediately shifted gears, their faces transforming into masks of hurt confusion. My mom wiped her tears, her voice wounded. "She's refusing to let us celebrate her graduation." Couch with Jess, still in our gowns. Messages from my mom. "You humiliated us. You ruined your own graduation. You broke my heart by choosing strangers over family." They kept coming, alternating between guilt trips and anger. I scrolled through them without responding. Jess read over my shoulder. "She's making it entirely about her feelings, isn't she?" she observed. She was right. Not one mention of the fraud or cutting me off. Jess asked if I'd respond. I shook my head. Nothing to say that I hadn't already. Engaging would just give them another opening. I silenced my phone and tossed it onto the coffee table. Jess suggested pizza and a mindless cooking show. Perfect. The next 2 months blurred into summer work. I picked up shifts at the campus library, started a research assistant position. Jess and I found a proper flat for my master's program. Nothing fancy but ours. Uncle Craig helped us move in. Life felt stable in a way it never did with my parents. Even though I was working harder than ever, I was building something for myself. In late August, my mom's email arrived. "We need to talk." My stomach tightened, but I opened it. A long message about therapy, reflection, how they handled my transition to independence poorly and should have been more supportive. Full of therapy jargon about growth. But nowhere did she mention the fraud, the money they pocketed, or that they claimed benefits while cutting me off. Everything was framed as a parenting mistake, like tough love gone wrong, completely ignoring the criminal behavior. I read it twice. Anger built. I started typing a response, fingers flying. I listed everything. The £13,000 they collected versus the £8,000 they spent. The tax credits for my third year. Their refusal to provide documentation. The nights I spent terrified of homelessness. The 20 job applications. The tears over my laptop. The response got longer, angrier. Then I stopped. I saved it as a draft. The next morning, I saw my university counselor. She read my mom's email, then my unsent response. "What do you notice about the difference?" she asked. "My response addresses specific actions," I said. "Hers talks in vague generalities." The counselor agreed. "It was a non-apology," she explained. "Something that looks like taking responsibility, but actually centers the apologizer's feelings, not the harm they caused." We walked through it line by line. No mention of making things right, no acknowledgement of fraud. Just words about her journey. The counselor suggested I write down what a real apology would look like for myself. I spent the session writing. A real apology would acknowledge the fraud specifically. It would recognize the fear and stress they caused. It would offer to return the money they profited. Real amends would respect my boundaries without guilt trips, give me space, stop rewriting history. Writing it down made me realize I wasn't asking for anything unreasonable, just basic accountability and respect. I decided to send a brief response, maybe 3 paragraphs to her pages. I told her I'd consider rebuilding a relationship if they took full responsibility for the fraud, made financial restitution, and respected my need for space without guilt-tripping or manipulation. I kept it factual, unemotional. I didn't expect them to meet these requirements, but I had been clear. I hit send. Less than an hour later, my dad's response. Short, angry, calling me ridiculous and vindictive for demanding money. He wrote that the tax credits and allowances were their money for raising me, that they spent 20 years supporting me, and I was ungrateful. He completely missed the point that they claimed current support they weren't providing. His response actually made everything easier. It confirmed they still didn't understand what they did wrong. They still thought this was about me being spoiled, not about fraud and broken trust. I didn't reply, and I didn't feel guilty. That showed me how much I'd grown. I forwarded both emails to Uncle Craig, then deleted them. My master's program started. Jess and I got the flat fully set up. I met my advisor. Classes felt exciting because I chose this path. I was studying something I was passionate about, paying for it through my own work and legitimate financial aid. Uncle Craig came for dinner once a month. It felt more like real family than any holiday meal with my parents ever did. In graduate seminars, I met other students. We talked about family drama. One guy's messy divorce. Another's mom not speaking to her because of career choices. Someone else's parents controlling everything with money and guilt. I realized how common it was to have complicated family relationships, to have to set boundaries with parents who couldn't acknowledge their mistakes. It helped to know I wasn't alone. The holidays came. A card arrived, my mom's handwriting. A generic snowy scene. Her handwritten note, "Hope you're well. Thinking of you." No acknowledgement of anything that happened. Just surface-level pleasantry. I showed it to Jess. She rolled her eyes, still trying to maintain appearances without doing any real work. I put the card in a drawer. Didn't send one back. I spent the holidays with Jess's family. Her mom picked us up, the drive full of easy conversation. Their house was warm, decorated. Everyone genuinely happy to see us. Her mom hugged me. "Always wanted another daughter," she joked, and that warmth spread through me. We cooked, played games, watched movies. No one asked invasive questions. They just included me like I belonged. A total contrast to the tense, conditional love I grew up with. This was what family was supposed to feel like. People who showed up without strings attached. In January, Uncle Craig called for coffee. He mentioned my parents had asked him if I'd be willing to meet them. He told them they needed to communicate directly and respect whatever boundaries I set. My mom got upset, accused him of encouraging me to cut them out. Dad accused him of turning me against them. Craig said he made it clear he wasn't their messenger. He was showing me what healthy boundaries looked like. We talked about my research, his trip to Scotland. It felt good to have conversations, not about them. By spring, I was thriving in my master's program. My supervisor offered me a better-paying research position. I was saving money, not just surviving. The flat Jess and I shared felt like home. I was genuinely happy. My grades were strong, my research was going well, and I had friends who supported me. One afternoon, a Facebook message from a family friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Your parents miss you. Anything that could repair the relationship. I took a few hours to respond. I explained honestly that until they acknowledged the fraud and made genuine amends, there was nothing to repair. I reiterated everything. Cut off, tax fraud, refused help, showed up at graduation acting innocent. Any reconciliation would require full responsibility, returning the money and respecting my boundaries. The friend responded a few days later, uncomfortable. Maybe you should be the bigger person, she suggested. Parents make mistakes. Family is important. I politely explained that being the bigger person didn't mean accepting abuse or fraud. I was done explaining myself to people who prioritized appearances over accountability. She didn't respond again, and I was okay with it. That evening, Jess and I were making dinner. You seem so much more confident, she observed, relaxed compared to when we first met. She was right. I'd stopped trying to earn love from people who treated it as conditional. Stopped twisting myself into shapes that might finally make them proud. The relief of not carrying that weight anymore was incredible. I could finally breathe. In April, Uncle Craig called. He'd officially cut financial ties with my parents. He couldn't in good conscience work with people who lied to him professionally and treated family so poorly. They were angry, accused him of abandoning them too, but he stood firm. He said they kept trying to use their tax appointments to ask about me and complain. His decision validated my own boundaries. It showed me that others saw the situation clearly. I wasn't crazy or vindictive. Their actions had consequences beyond just losing me. As my first year of graduate school ended, I thought about how much my life had changed since that phone call on my 20th birthday. What my parents intended as a punishment, a harsh lesson in independence, actually freed me from their control and manipulation. They wanted me to struggle and come crawling back. Instead, I built a life without them, found people who actually cared, learned what real support looked like. They taught me what not to do, how not to treat people you claim to love, how not to use money as a weapon, how not to prioritize appearances over actual relationships. I wouldn't choose to go through it again, but I'm stronger and happier now. Jess and I sat at our kitchen table, signing our lease renewal. No anxiety. The flat was ours for another 12 months. I'd accepted a summer research position in the psychology department, £15 an hour, 20 hours a week. Steady income. I was building a career on my own merit, publishing papers, getting invited to conferences. The pride I felt had nothing to do with anyone's approval but my own. The money I earned went directly into my account. No strings attached, no guilt trips, no lectures. Uncle Craig picked me up outside the library in late May. We went to his favorite Italian restaurant to celebrate my first year of graduate school. He ordered wine, toasted my achievements. I felt the warmth of genuine family support. Over pasta, he casually mentioned my parents had reached out again, asking about reconciliation. He told them the ball was entirely in their court and required genuine accountability. They didn't like that answer, tried to argue they'd apologized enough. He said he was done being their messenger. I told him honestly that I was genuinely happy with my life exactly as it was. I wasn't opposed to reconciliation someday, but it would require them to fundamentally change how they viewed our relationship, to treat me like an actual person, not an extension of themselves. I wasn't holding my breath, but I wasn't bitter anymore. The anger had faded into acceptance. Some people just can't give you what you need. Craig nodded. That's probably the healthiest attitude you could have. He was proud of how I'd handled an impossible situation with grace and strength. Looking ahead to my second year, I felt genuinely excited, confident. I'd built a support system of people who genuinely cared. I was financially stable through my own work and scholarships. And I'd learned the hard way that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who refuse to treat you with basic respect. My parents wanted to teach me independence as some kind of harsh lesson. Instead, I learned what real independence truly means. Have you ever had to choose yourself over the family you were given? Or built your own chosen family against the odds? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I'm really interested to hear your stories.